That's just unfair, right? It's not right that they're paying less council tax.
So we're here at HM Treasury now. We're going to get to ask the ministers some questions about the budget, why they made these decisions, and really what's going to help you understand the decision making behind the headlines. So I'm here with Katie, who's the Minister of Climate, but Katie and I are going to talk a little bit about the housing market and how Labour's plans are affecting particularly the 1.5 million homes. That seems to be the headline. Everyone focuses on the fact that we're very behind, shall we say, on that target. What would you say to those people?
So look, we want to make sure we build, that we've got that 1.5 million target, as you say, by the end of this Parliament. We want to have built a lot more houses. It's become increasingly difficult to build stuff in the UK. I think everybody's agreed with that. And so that's why we've had this planning legislation going through. It's been going through Parliament. We're just about there. The other thing I've heard from people is that actually there's not enough planning officers to actually just move some of this stuff through. There's a bit of a bureaucratic backlog, so we've announced some of that today. The other thing that we're doing in our department is looking at the houses we've got and making sure we retrofit some of those in terms of them costing less, because obviously energy use is a big issue at the moment. So we're looking at, actually, and we're announced more money today for our warm homes programme, and that's a really smart thing to do, because it means you're using less energy. You know, the most efficient form of energy is the one that isn't used at all. So I think we're looking now, we're going to have our plan out by the end of the year. Up to 5 million homes will be in receipt of this warm homes retrofit as well. So it's, you know, running costs of houses, obviously it's, you know, one of the biggest things at the moment for everybody. Energy costs are up there. So we did have we already have said that we're having a warm homes discount, £150 going to those people who need it. We doubled that, so we've got to 6 million people. We announced that a few weeks ago. I know, because I was knocking on the door and someone was saying thanks. They'd got their money, so they were happy with that, which was great. But this is about a longer term plan, because actually what we do need, as well as building new houses of good quality, we also need to make sure that we upgrade the housing stock that we've got, because we've got some of the coldest, leakiest housing within Europe, and that costs a lot of money. It's also not incredibly comfortable for people, so we want to do both of those things at the same time.
Makes complete sense. What about the fact that, you know, landlord's tax has been increased today, and we're already concerned that with the Renters' Rights Act that landlords may start to exit, and we actually don't want that in the industry. We want to keep the landlords happy and engaged so that there are houses for people to rent. What would you say in regards to that? Obviously they're still waiting to get clarity on other impacts to do with energy. What would your response be to the landlords?
So I've spoken to landlords within my constituency who've talked to me. Look, we want to make sure that we've got a balance. Of course, we want to make sure that we've got houses available for rent. That's a really important part of the market. You know, we also want to make sure that we've protected some of the tenants who there has been incidents where it's not been great, and we want to make sure that they have the rights as well. It's always a balancing act. I think we feel we've got the right balance there today, but we'll continue to engage with the industry and make sure that we are, as you say, at the end of the day, we want to make sure more people have got a safe, secure, you know, an affordable home. That's our end goal, and we'll be doing that in different ways, whether it's building, whether it's upgrading, you know, or whether it's working with local authorities or with landlords. So
the property market's reaction to the budget today has been that perhaps the sort of higher earners of the country are stopping seeing the UK as a place for prosperity, a place for success, and may start to continue to exit the UK based on some of the decisions being made in their area of the market. What would your response be to that?
So I think, look, we are in a position where we want to invest in our country. We want to invest in our country. That's for everybody, whether it's in terms of schools, roads, hospitals. We need to invest. We haven't invested for a long, long time. And so today we've asked everyone to pay a little bit more money. For those people who have a home over £2 million, which is a very small percentage of the population, we're saying, can you pay a little bit more? And we're looking at ways as well that could be, you know, whether it's paid up front or whether it's when they're selling the house, whatever. There's ways we're looking at how to implement that. But I think we're looking across the board, what are fair ways of raising some revenue in order that we can invest in the country, you know. And for us, in terms of Labour, investment is one of our biggest strategic approaches. I think it's absolutely the right one. For a long time, we know some of these difficult decisions have been kicked down the road, whether it's around our energy system, whether it's around reservoirs, whether it's around housing. We need to invest for the future, and so there is some spending that is needed in order to make sure we haven't got crumbling schools, hospitals, etc., and that will be a good thing in the long term.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm here with Jason Stockwood, who's the Investment Minister, and I'm going to ask some questions broadly around how the housing market affects investability, I suppose, if that's even a word, in the UK.
It is now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is now. So let's talk about that. So the housing market's critical to the UK being an area and a country that people want to invest in. So what has the autumn budget brought today that kind of instills that?
So the big thing is about creating confidence for investors. So I spend my time trying to raise money for the big projects in the UK around industrial strategy. So one of the things that I keep, so I've got a business background the last 30 years, and I keep describing this as a turnaround. So we've got, we've had 18 months where we've done the difficult things, and today was really about setting the conditions of stability, so that the economy can start growing again. So in terms of the house market, that will apply as well. So now people realise that we are, one of the fastest growing economies in the G7, that we've got long-term stability. That stability will bring down interest rates, so cost of borrowing. So all of those things will make us an attractive place to invest, and importantly, the housing market will benefit from that, both from an individual point of view, lower mortgage prices, and from an aggregate investor point of view, because there'll be more capital to deliver some of the big housing projects that we need in the UK.
What do you think is going to happen to mortgage interest rates?
So the overall cost of borrowing, the big lenders globally will look at what we're setting out, and the fiscal rules that we've created for ourselves give people certainty to invest, and the impact of that means that interest rates should come down. We've already had that in this Parliament already under a Labour government, but all these conditions and what we've seen in the lending, the gilt markets today, is our cost of borrowing come down, and ultimately that will come through to consumers. So you've got this combination of people know what we're about now, the certainty in the market, and that'll hopefully stimulate people to think, okay, we know where we're going to be for the next few years, we'll have more cash in our pockets, and hopefully we can start investing in house buying and things like that again. So I'm really optimistic, and the markets have responded favourably, but it only matters if it affects people in day to day.
Absolutely. Do you think the Bank of England are going to lower the Bank of England base rate next month?
As a Treasury official, I can't comment on that. As a citizen, I think the conditions are set for that to happen, but I have no insight on that whatsoever.
No.
But what they will look for is our cost of borrowing coming down, stability in the market. The Chancellor has done that today. The Bank of England will make their own independent decision, but we're trying to set the conditions for that to happen, so hopefully it will.
Nice Christmas present that'll be, wouldn't it? Thank you so much. Hi, I'm here with Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hello, my name's Dan Tomlinson. I'm the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, which means I'm in charge of tax policy and spend a lot of my time talking to Rachel Reeves about the tax decisions that she's made in this budget.
Okay, so tax is probably the biggest part of the budget, I would say, or the most spoken about in our industry. So we've seen something brand new, mansion tax. Can you tell us a little bit about what led the Treasury to make that decision, and Rachel Reeves?
So it's called the High Value Council Tax Surcharge, and we're applying it to properties worth 2 million or more, which is less than 1% of all the properties in the country. But those properties, you can have a £10 million house just down the road from us here in central London, and right now people in those houses are paying less council tax than a typical home in pretty much every other single part of England. And that's just unfair, right? It's not right that they're paying less council tax than almost everyone else. So what we've done is we've added some extra bands in this surcharge, going up from 2 million up to however much, the very biggest house in the country, and we're asking them to chip in a bit more. We think that's the right thing to do to even out that unfairness, and all of the money that raises, we're going to put that back into supporting local government and helping people get the funding that they need for their local services.
Okay. So will the council tax bans be reviewed? Is that still on the cards? Because they're quite old, aren't they? The council tax bans date back, and they're not necessarily representative of the properties that are in those bans. Is that still planned to go ahead?
No. So we're not going to do a re-evaluation of all of the council tax bans. We're just going to look and be very targeted and just get the up-to-date values of the homes worth £2 million or more. Because, frankly, that's a lot easier practically to do, right? We have to look at 1% of the homes rather than 100% of them. But also, we don't want to sort of rip up the council tax system. We just want to put this new surcharge on top of it for those with the very biggest properties who are paying less council tax than probably everyone in this room.
And what about the landlord's tax? We've seen 2% additional landlord's tax being added from 2027. Are we concerned that that will make more landlords exit the market?
Every single landlord in the country doesn't pay national insurance, but all of their tenants do. And so what we've done, we've looked at the tax system, and on this example, we've looked and seen, is this fair? Is this the right way to have a tax system where a landlord pays less tax than their tenant? And look, we don't think that is fair. So we're just asking for a 2p more contribution from landlords that will close the gap a little bit, but by no means all the way. And in the end, what matters when it comes to housing supply is this government's ability to do things like change the planning system and to get house building rates up. We've said we want to get 1.5 million more homes built over the course of this parliament, and that in the end is going to be the big driver of things like how much it costs to rent, and the interaction of supply and demand in the housing market.
Okay, and the 1.5 million homes, we're a little bit behind target, I would say, at this point. Are you still positive that we'll get there?
We've got to do everything we can to get there. It's so important. I'm a constituency MP here in London, actually, just in North London. And time again, when I go and knock on doors, which I try and do almost every weekend, though I've missed a few weekends in the last few weeks, time and time again, I've met people in their 50s and 60s who've got their grown-up kids still at home because their kids cannot afford to move out and get a place of their own. And we know that the only way that we can make sure that housing, both to rent and to buy, is more affordable is by increasing housing supply in this country. So the planning bill, the House of Lords have been trying to hold it up, but I think they finally released it from their grasp, and now we're going to get that passed through Parliament. That's going to be a really good thing for improving the way our planning system works so we can get more homes built.
Yes, I'm very passionate about getting people on the ladder. I've got a series out called On the Ladder, and 8 out of 10 university students in the UK right now believe they won't ever own their own property. There was nothing specifically for first-time buyers in the budget in regards to that. But what would you say to those people? How are the Labour government going to change their perceptions so that we can get more younger first-time buyers?
We've just got to make sure that we can make housing more affordable. That's definitely through building more homes. Yeah. But the other thing that's so important, and I know lots of the people who listen to and watch your work will know, is that the big challenge as well is interest rates.
Yes.
So interest rates surged under the last government. They had this thing called the mini budget where they basically gave up on running the economy well. Interest rates went up and up and up. And that's been really difficult for people who want to get a foot on the housing ladder. In the 1970s, interest rates were high, but house prices were low.
Yeah.
And now we've got high interest rates and high house prices. That's so tough for young people. But since this government's come in, we've brought back some economic stability, and interest rates have been cut 5 times. And that is the sort of thing that helps people. A mortgage now, compared to before when we came in, will be £1,000 cheaper. I think £1,200 cheaper. And that is exactly what we need.
We have seen huge improvements in the property market already, which is really positive, so that's great. Do you think the Bank of England are going to reduce the Bank of England base rate, which will help mortgage rates next month?
Well, I'm not sure as a Treasury Minister I should comment on what the Bank of England should do because they're entirely independent.
Okay.
But you can look at the market forecasts, and markets do expect further interest rate cuts.
Very diplomatic answer, but fair enough. Thank you. So I've asked as many ministers, as many questions as I could squeeze in to the time we've had here. We've had just over an hour here at the Treasury. I hope I've asked as many of the questions you would want to know as possible. It is quite hard when you're in here to think straight, I'm not going to lie. But I've done the best I can, and I'm very grateful to be here.